Welcome to Copy Chief Radio. Today's show is a wisdom tree episode where well-known legends and even lesser-known but wildly successful entrepreneurs share their hard-won wisdom and actionable advice for succeeding in business. To check out all the Copy Chief Radio episode types, go to copychief.com/CCR. Hey, it's Kev. Welcome. I'm glad you're here. Very excited to be talking with my friend Gary Goldstein today. Gary is someone I've known for years. He is a very accomplished Hollywood producer. I'll let him give the highlights of his resume in case you've never heard of Gary. But the reason we're on this call today is to discuss creatives and how creatives can better grow a business, which is obviously what I do all day long here. And it's also a big part of what Gary does after, decades of success in Hollywood. He, like me, loves to help people new to the business figure out the sort of easy way, which is always less complicated than we're making it, to opening doors and finding success, to add the important commerce aspect to their creative endeavors. So Gary, thanks for being here, and please help the audience understand a little bit about what you've been up to, and we'll dive into what we're doing now.
Okay, in a nutshell. Well, it's interesting, Kevin, because early in life, I went to law school. I was a UC Berkeley hippie. I produced the music concerts back in the day with Joni Mitchell and all these great, Janis Joplin and all these cool people. And I was a dreamer, and I really was a black belt in daydreaming. That's kind of my youth. I was the boy in the bubble. I decided that I really needed to learn an adult language to ground myself, because otherwise I was going to just flow down into the ether. So I decided to go to law school. I was into social justice and politics back in the day. And I went to law school to become a criminal defense lawyer in the ghetto of San Francisco for a foundation representing the adult population of that geography in lieu of the public defender. And it was one of the best chapters. If your life is a book, it was maybe one of the most glorious chapters ever, and totally ill-fitting to me. So I'm a romantic. It was harsh. It was dark. It was difficult. And I ran away. And I ran to my dad, who was my hero. And I said, "Hey, Dad, I'm nervous as hell telling you this, but I think I'm going to quit my job, but I'm not quitting a job. I'm quitting a career." I expected a lecture. And my dad turned to me in that instant and he said, with a big smile, without missing a beat, he said, "Great." And I said, "Wait a minute. Not what I expected. Why do you say that?" And he said, "Because honestly, I don't think you've been happy. And I think you should find in life whatever it is that excites you, and whatever it is, go after it." And that's sort of like, for a man of his generation, that was pretty lean forward. But it had my dad was, my greatest teacher. And in that moment, I think he really confirmed an instinct that I had, which is to pursue my dreams and welcome and embrace change and dare to fail. And long story short, I moved to LA in the early 80s. I didn't know a thing about the business. I didn't know anyone in LA. But I was kind of, again, part naive daydreamer, part stubborn. I've never been afraid of work. So I joined an outdoor health club, and I figured that all the people that would be there Monday to Friday during the day are freelance creatives. And that's where I met my tribe. And everybody became my 5-minute mentor. And I finally realized out of that I didn't want to be a lawyer, but I knew how to represent people. So I spent a dozen years building. The first several years were messy and bloody, but it became a real business. I formed a literary management company representing writers and directors, or hyphenates, writer-directors, in film and TV, and breaking people who were as green and new as I was into the business. And eventually it got really, really exciting and fun, and it was a good business. And then the writers went on strike in '88, shut all the production down for a year. And during that time, I realized, gosh, I'm not going to sit around. So I had one of my clients dust off one of his film school scripts, and he'd always wanted to direct. And I thought, I think I want to try this thing called producing. We went off and made a no budget film, had a riot, made every mistake in the book, made a film called Cannibal Women in the Avocado Jungle of Death. with Bill Maher and Adrienne Barbeau and Shannon Tweed. It was hysterical, a feminist spoof comedy, and it ran on cable for 15 years, and I got the bug. Wow. like, okay, I'm going to dismantle the management company, become a producer. And that's what I've done.
Hmm.
Majority of my adulthood, I mean, for many years, that was my main focus. And I was very blessed because from indie, the game was matriculate before the streamers to the studios. And I did that. My first studio film for Disney was for Disney. And it had a different title, but it was the film that became Pretty Woman. It's like winning the lottery your first time.
Yeah. I mean,
it's ridiculous. A film that is as popular and big today in the world as it was.
Still mentioned whenever people talk about their favorite films, top films.
Yeah. So I did, and I had a couple of other, nice successes. And then the business started to change, and I took a hiatus. I did a walkabout and explored other things, whether it was writing or speaking, or I have a real entrepreneurial streak. So I became a part of several startups, and I won't bore you with all that. But I mean, today I'm back in the, I've sort of come full circle, and I'm back developing films and a TV series and blah, blah, blah. And very excited about it. But it's really just one of the things that I do. And I really do encourage others, and myself included, to really pursue the thing that most lights you up. What gives you joy? What brings you alive? And for me, that's everything from, investing in really cool companies and being part of the team. It has to do with taking a rundown piece of property in Idaho and making it this gorgeous thing. It's writing my next manuscript. It's, the things that just add meaning to my life. And in a nutshell, that's kind of it. I think of myself as sort of either a creative entrepreneur or a professional schizophrenic.
But either way, it's working out. The bills are paid, and you get to explore.
I'm blessed, grateful, and not suffering. Yeah.
I love it. I have to ask, because it's fascinating to me, and I think a lot of people are really interested in how it actually works in Hollywood when you have a success. If you don't mind, what does it do to you when you're basically a new producer on the scene and you end up producing something like Pretty Woman, who becomes this unbelievable mega hit? How much does that change your life and career overnight?
It changes everything. The only sort of punctuation mark is that I was still very young, and I was still somewhat naive. So I'm not sure that I understood how to intentionally capitalize on what was happening, or even recognizing what it was that was happening. Even though I was not maybe as savvy as I might have been, nonetheless, it was what it was. And a lot of doors open. So when you walk in, when you call someone and say, hey, I'd like to have a chat, or I've got a project, I want to come in and have a meeting, whatever it might be, there's the welcome mat is out. And I was never a volume producer. It wasn't like I had a company. I had a staff, but I didn't have 30 projects or 40 projects in development. I always had like a handful that I was really super passionate about. So, that being said, people knew that I rarely came out with a script or a project. And when I did, it was, but that film was the gilded frame I walked through.
Right.
Conversations. So much so that, and I would say, look, what we do as creatives, whether you're a novelist or a filmmaker or whatever it is, it has a global audience. So this is a great example to answer your question. It's so powerful. And it's not me. It's not Gary Goldstein, this kid who grew up from Long Island to San Francisco. Nobody knows who I am, but they know Pretty Woman. And by being associated with the guy who developed and produced it, once upon a time, I went to South Africa, and I really wanted to develop a bit. I fell in love, and I wanted to develop a business there, a film business. And they didn't have colorized crews. They were all white. And I wanted to create a special kind of company that would produce films there based on this amazing treasure trove of story that was globally exportable, not just for local consumption, so in a bridge between Hollywood and South Africa. I was able to partner with a gentleman named Cyril Ramaphosa. Cyril was one of the people in prison for 27 years with Mandela et al. He was the head of the workers' union. He was at the negotiating table when it was turned over from ANC from the apartheid regime to ANC. He is now president of the country. He was one of the most beloved people in the country. I got to partner with him, the owner of the biggest Black empowerment company in the country at the time, not because of who I am, but I was able to go and meet with him and partner with him and all that he brought to the table, simply because the power of a film, the power of a story.
Yeah. I love that. At the end of the day, it's the product and the relationship that certain people have with the product, the story, the work, the art that opens the doors sort of more than other things, right? It's funny, we have this measurement, it's particularly in my world of marketing, where everybody talks about somebody's crushing it and doing these things. And it's always because measured by the numbers. And of course, things need to succeed, but nobody goes out of their way to make arrangements or want to have a conversation with you because Pretty Woman made all the money it did. Maybe back then when it was, that was the name of the game in the business. But people, I'm sure, tell you all the time what the story meant to them or how it affected them when they saw it and how much it means to share it with other people, right? That's the amazing part about being in the arts and being able to figure out or even have some fortuitous things happen with the commerce component of it. But at the end of the day, it all comes down to how people were affected by the art.
Yeah, the commerce, the box office, whatever you want to call it, is merely a reflection of how well you've touched your audience. How have you impacted their lives? I mean, the stories to this day that keep flooding, that come in periodically, what that film has meant to them or when they first saw it. It's just, you got to be humbled and grateful for being a part of something that has touched so many people. And I believe we all, it's like, that's why I love anyone who's in the creative arts. I love anyone who's a storyteller, anyone who's a sculptor, anyone who's a photographer, anyone who's a writer. I mean, that's sort of like, I think it's a luxury to be able to do that and be part of that human community of storytellers that help us remember who we are.
Yeah, 100%. It's everything. It's relationships. It's the meaningful moments. It's the stuff that brings us back down to earth when we start to lose our way, maybe, or guides us in a new direction. It really is the stuff. And I know you do a lot of coaching of creatives now. And again, it's very much a passion sort of project for you. Right. Let's talk about when people come to you, what are they looking to solve a certain thing, or they just want your input, your feedback on stuff they're working on? How does that look?
All different shapes, sizes, and colors. But I would tell you that the most common denominator is frustration. You've got people who have these aspirations and in many cases, certainly the talent to back it up, but they're frustrated because they have no idea how to travel from where they are to where they desire to be. Years ago, there was a gal, and I knew her in business. She was 14 years in the executive suite of Columbia Pictures back in the day that became Sony. She was the head of business and legal affairs, or one of the top people in business and legal affairs. She was so respected and such a deal maker and knew everybody in the business. What I didn't realize, and one day she phoned me and said, "Gary, I need your help. I need you to coach me." And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't even imagine what you're talking about. You're one of the most sophisticated, savvy people I know. Everybody respects you. What can I teach you? Well, how can I help you? And it turned out that she had been on the side a closet writer, and she'd been writing screenplays and decided to leave her perch with all that success to pursue her creative dream of being a successful screenwriter. As soon as she made that decision, it was like Kevin, it was actually like she got a lobotomy. She forgot everything she knew. She lost her confidence. Suddenly, when you make the choice to be a creative, the world, unlike almost all the other lanes on the highway of professional endeavors, whether you're an accountant, a chef or whatever, where a lawyer like I was, it's pretty evident how you move through the stages of, evolving into a success. When you choose creativity, it seems like a random labyrinth that's dark. It's a dark forest and you hear sounds, but you can't tell what they are or where they're coming from, which is, of course, not the case. There are thousands who've come before and succeeded. And if you really just think about and that's why I became a lit manager. I understood how to translate entrepreneurship into this sort of unknowable realm. So I think the most common thing is frustration with not knowing how to present themselves, and also just not having the confidence, not seeing their value, not understanding their worth, and hiding behind the script, trying to make it a fail, a pass, fail, a yes, no, thumb up, thumb down, which is a horrible way you'll waste years and be very
Meaning they're writing it as a product instead of
not necessarily. Once they've poured their soul into it, their sweat equity into it, their love into it. Now they've got to make something. They've got to push it out into the world. We live in the most collaborative medium on the planet. So the way they do that, given their sudden insecurity, because they don't think they've earned the right, is to try and do blind query letters and send it out to strangers. Please read it. Please read it. And it doesn't work.
Right.
They're terrified of rejection, but they don't. If it were any other industry, the first thing you do is you forget about sales and think about business development. What is that about? That's about being other focused, about growing rapport, developing relationships before you ever need them. And so I sort of dial it back and sort of set a new table and mindset and tactics. I wouldn't even say they're strategies. It's like, these are the things, if you invested 20 minutes a day, 5 days a week in 1 year, you can completely you'd look back and not recognize the landscape behind you.
Well, that's great. I spent just enough time in Hollywood trying to quote unquote break in, and had what I thought was an in, only to find out that's not an in. Just because your best friend is a star of a show named after him doesn't mean he gets to choose a writer. Surprise. And so I got to exist there for about a year and feeling like I was outside the fortress walls with no way to break in, no confidence, a lot like what you're talking about. What is some of the things you do even 5 minutes a day to feel less like that and see some momentum?
The first thing is, I think, stop being random. Like, get fierce, get really intentional about what you want, because it's not one size fits all. Kevin Rogers and Gary Goldstein are going to have two totally different roadmaps, which means that you have a different destination in mind. To get there, you need, it's a team sport. You need people. And most writers just think any agent, any manager, someone to represent me so I don't have to be self-responsible, number one. And number two, any producer who would take it on. That's okay, but it's very myopic. Because what you really want to do is say, okay, not just who are the ones, whose body of work, who stands for the kinds of things that I aspire to be known for, what kind of projects work, how they represent people, how they produce, what the sorts of things they produce. And just literally, I have a thing called the top 100 list. It doesn't start as 100, but it might be 10, 20. Like showing people exactly how to research it quickly, easily, to know who are the people that I should be targeting, and then teaching them how to reach out to them, because you don't even necessarily want to reach and speak directly with the name on the door. You want to know their creative exec or their assistant, better yet. I built my entire career, even to this day, on the basis of developing rapport with assistants. Once you have that, and they're so alike, they're such kindred spirits, they have a similar view of the world, and they have that young ambition and need to develop these relationships with talent. If you understand how simple it is, and I can even role play it, I do that all the time. It's like a bulb goes off and people go, oh my God, I thought there was a boogeyman, a scary machete wielding, whatever. And now it's like, wait a minute, I did what you said. It was horrible at first, but I've done it now. I made one call a day for the last week. And oh my God, 4 out of the 5, they were really friendly. They were very inviting. They listened, it's like it worked. And you teach them how to follow on and not ask big favors, not reach out to a stranger and say, I need a few hours of your time to read my script or to think about representing me or any of that. That's not the way to say hello to someone.
So how's your freelance business doing? Not really, I want to know. Because did you know there are 7 phases of a freelancing career? It's true. I know this because I created the phases, but not just for fun or, to have a hook. It's because I've lived all of these phases, and I've now coached hundreds of freelancers through all 7 of these phases. They're real. So let's find out which phase you're in right now. And if you agree, I'll send you the short list of things you want to do right now to reach the next phase where life gets much better. If you're feeling stuck, let's unstuck your freelancing. Copychief.com/phases. Take the quick assessment, get your result, and get moving forward. Copychief.com/phases. I'll see you there. I know in our industry, we talk about one way to do cold outreach is essentially what we're talking about here is like, first of all, be an actual fan of the person you're hoping to get attention from, or someone in their organization. Meaning for us, it's easy because they're putting out ads all the time. And you can look at one of their ads, and if you organically see something that you feel could be improved, you can do, I call it a 2-in-1. It's like 2 things you love about the ad and admire and gloat on, and the one thing that you're just curious about, if maybe they've tried. Make a little Loom video and you send it, and you ask nothing. There's no pitch. There's no, and hey, if you think you need more of this brilliance, you could, you know what I mean? It's just, here's something for you because I admire what you're doing. And that's when it works, because it just feels like a gift that you should intend it to be.
It's such an opportunity, a valuable opportunity to actually learn something and not just grow a rapport. But I mean, you and I are peas in a pod, because that's how if you generally do have questions, right? And if you're basically giving someone a promotion, respecting them and saying, hey, without necessarily using the word, I'd like you to be my 3-minute mentor. I really respect you. And here's why I've chosen you. Here's why I'm reaching out to you. It's very refreshing compared to the way most people communicate in not just this industry, but many.
Anything with business. Yeah. People are a bit naive. I love when there was the guy that used to park cars at my doctor's office. They got you have to use the valet. And this guy, every time I pulled up, Gary, he was telling somebody about a script he wrote. Forget who. I just to say it was Bradley Cooper, right? And he always would say, if I could just get 5 minutes with Bradley Cooper, he would know instantly what we had here. And I would only want half. this kind of like unbelievably naive, notion, right? And this guy would be shocked to find out that there happens to be 100,000 other people who have the same script idea, And it's beautiful when you see it isolated, from a person like that. But when you're in Hollywood, it's literally why everybody moved there to try to actually corner Bradley Cooper, And so I would imagine for you, like treating people to actually be a friend to people and find a way to be valuable and create actual relationships is like a breakthrough.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny. I've always had the feeling that in any field of endeavor, but certainly in Hollywood, it doesn't take a lot to stand out, to be unique, to shine. But it requires a little bit of self-belief. And the way you arrive at that is through growing a little bit of musculature around certain tiny little easy habits that are measurable, because it seems so random and like scary. But there's ways to break it down that are tried and true. I did it for so many clients and for myself. I know what's possible, but it requires someone saying, okay, I'm going to I'm going to shift my mindset, not just my habits. I can define where I'm going to be in 3, 6, 12 months, 2 years, et cetera.
That was the crossroads that I look back on and think, that's what didn't have when I was in the arts, when I was a comedian. I didn't have enough belief in myself or direction towards which of those muscles to develop to feel like I could ever have any control over my fate. I really believe there were certain people who were given these wands that they will get to wave over people and make a career. Yeah, and that was it. That was the only way.
Well, we've all had, so-and-so got discovered 100 years ago sitting at the counter at Schwab's, but it doesn't,
right.
That's really not
quite happen that way.
It is about self-belief, but it's also about the fundamentals like generosity and vulnerability,
right.
And being okay to be, bring your humanity, wear your humanity into every conversation. it's entirely disarming. And if you marry that to this idea that I actually have a roadmap, I have a direction, I have a sort of a structure and a strategy that I can, like eating the elephant in bite-sized pieces, a little bit.
Right. And, you know, I think that leads to what I believe is the number one thing you have to have in order for anyone to want to help you is momentum. Momentum that you're creating, whether it's in the right direction or not, whether you know for sure where you're going or not, if you're putting energy towards your passion, your desire, and somebody sees that you're trying, that's why I'm like, who isn't happy to be a 3-minute mentor to that person if they can? And you can smell it, you can sense it when you meet somebody, and you can even sense it through an email or something, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's when it's not sort of stock, when there's something special, like someone reveals something about themselves or their motivated, their why, or their intention, or why they chose you. If they personalize it, even just a little bit, it actually stands out. It's like micro versions of the person who says, you know what, I'm not going to wait for permission. I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm going to find a few friends that I went to school with or through some platform, and there's tons of them. I'm going to take this little script that I have. I'm going to shoot a short film. The number of careers that have been launched off a not that remarkable short film is so sobering. People would be shocked to learn the who's who of A-list directors who started off because of one short summer in black and white, some of no dialogue. But people look at that and say, oh, they've got gumption. They're a doer.
Right. Yeah, that's everything. That's everything. That's what we want to hitch our wagon to or have at our side. Someone who's bringing energy, not sucking it. Awesome. Wow, we are so aligned in how we think. It's really cool. It's exactly the same. We're talking about freelancers. We're talking about being out there on your own and finding a way in that is unique to your abilities and skill sets. And if anyone listening to this is wondering and looking for, the shortcut, the hack, all these things that people love to promise, I can guarantee it. What you're going to come to, what's going to be the thing that helps you click over is when you just embrace that you already possess it and you need to give yourself permission to exercise it.
Amen. And, it's interesting. You talk about I've always thought that playing the long game is the short game. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is, if you polled the vast majority of, let's choose screenwriters or writers in general, they're looking for the publisher, the agent, the producer. It's a very predictable focus. But there's this magnificent, multicolored community of very skilled people who no one's knocking on their doors, but they're cinematographers and they're editors and they're other writers and they're casting directors and the list goes on and on and on. These are people who have an incredible body of experience and an incredible Rolodex of relationships that they've developed over the years and I've discovered is, first of all, no one's unreachable. That's one of the early lessons in life that I learned. If you approach people in the right way, successful people tend to be the most generous, the most available. But these people, no one's reaching out to them. And they're like the college professor, no one will, that's sitting alone in their office that everyone thinks is too busy, so they don't knock on the door. And it's a game of human billiards. And if you know how to play that, and it's genuine, it's thoughtful, it's real, it's kind, it's amazing how rapidly you can accelerate and actually create that sense of momentum that's so attractive, not just to others, but to yourself.
Yeah, I love it. You talked about just nurturing all the relationships you can at the level when you can access people. My friend Billy Gardell, who's now a very successful sitcom actor, he's had 2 multi-year series with Mike and Molly and now Bob Hart's Abishola. And he was ready to leave Hollywood because he felt like he had peaked as the guest star, on the sitcom before he got the call for Mike and Molly. But the way he earned even that career, Gary, was like he would show up to every audition, even when he knew he was a big guy, 300 plus pound guy, John Goodman type, old John Goodman type, and he'd show up and it's supposed to be Joey from Friends, he's like, I know I'm not supposed to be here. A lot of people would walk into the hallway, see all the other gorgeous actors and turn around and go home. He's like, well, I get a chance to charm the casting directors. And he literally charmed casting directors all the way throughout his career. They to the point where they would call him because he was a certain type. And they said, I love this guy. I want to work with him if I get a chance.
You have just nailed it. It's actually an anecdote that I use a lot. It's the actor anecdote, right? Because it was a true story. I mean, this actor that I knew, but some years ago, I ran into him and he was in a funk. And I said, what's going on? And he told me he had just gone to his dream audition for the dream role in a dream project, blah, blah, blah. And he went in and he didn't get the role. And I said, well, who was in the room? And he said, well, it was this casting director and their casting associate. And it was, one or two producers. I forget if the director was there, but there were these like the who's who, right? The people in this room are people you really want. I said, that's awesome. And I know that whatever performance you gave was your best performance in that moment. And there's a million reasons why you might not get the role. There's more, the list is longer than you can even imagine, right? You don't know what's going on behind the curtain. I think you've misunderstood the function and purpose of an audition. The audition is not to get the job because it's binary, it's pass fail. The job of an audition is to be invited back, to walk in there and metaphorically, and if not literally, love on and embrace and show your personality and just develop a human relationship with these people where they say exactly what you said, which is the best outcome, which is, gosh, I really like this person. I think they're talented. I got to figure out another thing where I could have them back. That's the win.
Yeah, amazing. And this is something we can do at conferences, wherever you go and interface with other people who, again, don't look at them as this person might have an opportunity for me. Right. Look at them as another person you're connecting with. Like I always think, and maybe I got this from being on the other side of this in Hollywood often enough, where, person's always looking over your shoulder at who else is in the room. And then, mid-sentence, they pat you on the arm and excuse themselves to go talk to somebody more important. And so, and also just because like you, Gary, I love people and I love human connection. You talked about your coaching calls, and for you, it's clearly not how you're making your money, but you love that time to just connect and meet people and meet them on their journey. How many times have we heard the story of someone who didn't know who they were talking to and had an amazing conversation and bonded over having the same kind of dog or whatever it was and just liked each other, only to find out then this person maybe but able to open amazing doors for them. But if they'd have known that before they sat down with them, probably would have stuttered and ran away or something,
Exactly right. Exactly right.
So human connection. Yeah.
Yeah. You just want to show up as that prepared, curious, optimistic, genuine, pretend you're at a cocktail party with someone who's smiling and welcoming you and wants to have the same conversation because they're in the sandbox that you're in. You obviously start with something in common. It's not as foreboding as people might believe at all.
Yeah, it's all in our heads. Awesome. All right, Gary, we could go on forever. I want to respect your time. Let's do more of these.
Kevin, this is beautiful. This is catnip to me. So I really enjoy it. It's been too long and I love just being with you.
Likewise, man. We don't need to record to get together. So we'll make that happen more anyway. But I love when we can share these stories and these inspirations. Obviously, sometimes you just need to hear it and be reminded that it doesn't need to be more complicated than you're making it. So.
Yeah. And what better time to do it than in the dawn of a beautiful new year?
Yeah, beautiful new year.
A big blank white canvas ready to be painted on.
Yeah, it is exciting. One way you can find Gary, creativeedge.com. If you want to learn more about how to be on Gary's coaching calls, you can do that there. Google Gary's name, I'm sure, and find all kinds of ways to learn more about all the great projects he's involved in. Anything else you want people to know, Gary, before we go?
No, I mean, if they're interested in the coaching, they don't have to read through all the gibberish on the website. They can just go to creativeedge.com/coaching. But no, it's, if they want to, they can Google whatever. But I just appreciate the conversation. I mean, to me, this is the heartland. Love who your audience is. They're definitely the tribe I align with.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you, Gary. We'll be doing it more. I appreciate you.
Absolutely, Kevin. Thanks so much. Have a beautiful day.
Hey, don't forget your goodies. Head over to copychief.com/copychiefradio to get some great free stuff to help you put the things you hear on the show into action for your business. Copychief.com/CCR.